Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of our Farming RPG tutorial series. So, if we look at the inventory here, seems to be a little glitch that if I click on a empty slot with a tool equipped, I can duplicate items. This bug has been around for a while now, so we're going to fix it. Let's go over to Inventory Manager. Now, where this bug is from the inventory to hand function. We take a look at this. Over from inventory to hand, when we want to equip the hand slot with the inventory slot over here in this function, what we did was only pass through the item slot data. And then we just use the isTool function to check whether it's a tool. But we did not account for the possibility that it could be an empty item. So that's why this bug only occurs when it's done in the tools section and not in the item section of the inventory. So to fix this, let's go back to our inventory to hand function. Before we call the equip hand slot function, we need to do some checks. So if it's empty, we should just empty the hand instead. Now when we go back over here, the glitch is no more. And with that, we've fixed our inventory bug. And now that leaves us with another long-standing bug. Whenever we plant a seed and then grow it out, once it's harvestable, it throws this error: collection was modified. Enumeration operation may not execute. This is because if we look over in crop behavior, under the switch state function, once the crop is harvestable, what we do is destroy the game object and deregister the crop. The problem with this, when we're importing the crop data, this loop is running. And then once we set the crop behavior to harvestable, the thing just removes itself from the list while the loop is running, which throws this error. So to prevent this, we need to delay the crop removal sequence to only occur after the player actually harvests the item. Over here, we have to remove this line. And that brings us to our next problem. How do we call this remove crop function when the player harvests the crop? Because our crop script for the harvestable crop is on interactable object. So what we can do is use the Unity event. Using Unity Engine events. And if we do that, you see this little thing here that we can add on the inspector. But we're not gonna do it from here. We're just using a Unity event instead of a delegate. So in future, if we want to do something here, it's easy for us. So using this event, let's call the function. Don't forget that we need to initialize this. Back over in our crop behavior, you just need to go harvestable, get component, access the onInteract callback, add a listener. And with that, the errors are cleared. We can now harvest it as usual. and it is now possible for it to wither after it's gone into the harvestable state, since the whole crop behavior object is not destroyed until it's actually harvested. So in that way, we are killing two birds with one stone here. We fixed the bug and we added a feature for it to wilt even after it has become harvestable. And that brings us to our next bug. Sometimes this error gets called out. Missing reference exception. The object of type transform has been destroyed, but you are still trying to access it. This is because there's probably two instances of our essentials prefab at some point. So we just need to add a check. This. This is over in the onLocation node function of Scene Transition Manager. And with that, we have fixed our bugs. Now that we've fixed our bugs, let's get into the tutorial proper for this week, for this episode. So what we were going to do today is to change up our UI a little bit and make it into a panel system. Because right now it's a bit messy for us to have our inventory panel like this and our relationships panel to be separate. And then we did a poll recently, and you guys preferred the tab system in the newer games. So that's what we're going to do today. So, but first, let's make this look a little better. Let's download this UI pack from Kenny. Let's bring this over in our UI assets. Now if we converted it to a sprite, set it to multiple, it seems to be quite a hassle to size all the sprite sheets like that. But if you look at this, there's an XML file that gives us the detail of how to slice a sprite sheet. So we should just use this XML file to slice the sprite sheet. And to do that, we'll need something from the asset store called the XML Texture Atlas Slicer. So we just have to get this, import it to our project. Now we go to Assets, Slice Sprite using XML. It automatically selects the thing, and we just click Slice. And just like that, everything is sliced. And now, let's use our new assets for everything over here in our UI. And with that, we take the relationships and inventory panel and put them under one game object. For this player menu, them under here. Now over here in the tabs, add a grid layout group. Set the spacing to 20. So this will be our tabs. And what we want it to be is in the middle center over here. And we'll have two tabs. First will be our inventory tab. Then this will be our relationships tab. Add an image over here. And now this is what it looks like so far. And now what we need is for a way to manage these tabs. So under UI folder, let's create a new script. Call this tab behavior. Over here, we add the I pointer all these interfaces like we did for our other UI behaviors. Get rid of this. So what we need in a tab behavior are the sprites that we need. We'll need a alt selected hover. And now in these tabs, actually let's make this a prefab. Inventory tab. In our tab, we assign it that behavior. We set everything accordingly. Default. Select it. And hover. Just like that. access the image component from our tab game object using Unity engine.ui, and then get component on the awake function. So now what we want to do is, let's do some basic sprite changes here. So when player clicks and selects the tab image is if player hovers over, and then once it exits, something should happen here. It works, though problem is after I select it, the moment I exit, it goes back to normal, which is not what we want. So we need a way to reset to its default render state. We need a way to keep track of what tab is currently being selected. So let's go over to UI Manager to handle this. Let's add header. First, we'll need a menu screen, because we need a way to open up this tab that we have. So let's get our menu screen, then we'll get an enum tab, keep track of all the tabs that we have. So we have inventory, relationships so far. We'll add on to this list, this enums as we expand. And then we'll keep track of what tab is currently being selected. And now let's do our tab management. We need a function called toggle menu panel. This will replace the inventory button that we have. Next, we need a function to manage the windows. A new function called window. First, we'll disable all the panels. With that, first for inventory, if it is our inventory, we set the inventory panel. Then we call the render inventory function. For relationships, same thing. And then we render our relationships. And then we set our selected tab accordingly. Okay. And now, over in our button, we have our menu bar. We just have to call our toggle menu panel instead of anything else. And on point to click, open the window associated with our tab. So UI Manager .tab to set the tab it represents. So let's call this tab. Our inventory tab should be inventory, and in our relationships tab, it's relationships. That's about it for this part. Oh yeah, wait, don't forget to assign menu screen over here. Our menu screen is player menu. Right, it works. But now we can have this, need to call this to render our tab state to correspond to its selection. There. The only problem is that it never deselects until I update it with the hovering, which is not what we want to do. So this should be called at every point. And we want it to be called, we want it to iterate through all corresponding tab behaviors that exist. So what we can do is add a static Unity event using Unity engine.events. Call this untab state. Now you can actually just use a delegate or an action where we're just using Unity events just so it's easier for us to add listener, because we can just do this in one line. So tab state change dot listener tab state. And then now we just have to call this function, and every time there's a change in tabs. We don't call this directly because this static event will be called for every tab that subscribes to it. And likewise in UI Manager, when the window changes, it should also be called. On our toggle menu panel, don't forget we open the window of our selected tab. So that way we don't end up with two tabs open at the same time. And then we render call this event, and oh yeah, I forgot to initialize this. There. Now when we just open it, the selected one is already highlighted. And it stays there, just as we want it. And it saves my preference. When I was previously on this tab, before I closed it, it's up here again. Oh, one last thing, let's update the UI for this bit. And yep, that's it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed the video. Want to support what we do? You can help us by becoming a patron. This will give you access to the project files for our tutorials, as well as patron-exclusive posts on our blog. Any support you can give will go a long way. Currently, we are making back about 20 cents for every dollar that we put into content creation. So your help will go a long way to help make this a sustainable endeavor. And with that, we'll see you next time.